Hello, hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into the Odd Thoughts podcast. At the Odd Thoughts podcast, we like to talk about the everyday odd thoughts, discuss whatever comes to mind, and have conversations on relatable topics. My name is Gunther, and I am your host. Welcome to episode 28. For episode 28, I kind of wanted to dive a little bit into talking about some of my favorite YouTube channels. I've watched YouTube for a long time, and there are plenty of channels that have kind of stuck out to me and have offered just endless amounts of entertainment over time. Then I transitioned into talking a little bit about having a daily routine. I think it's kind of important to have a little structure in your life, and no matter how small the steps are or how big they are, I think a routine can really help people stabilize what they do in their life. Then I transitioned into talking about expectations. Kind of that we sometimes in life with certain outcomes and certain aspects, we expect a certain thing to happen. And that can sometimes hurt us. And when things don't turn out how we expect them to, that can affect us in another way. Then, lastly, I talked a little bit about an article that I had read about some archaeologists who had discovered a body that was 1,300 years old. It was a mummified body, and it had a tattoo on its leg. And the tattoo might be referencing Jesus Christ. And so I thought it was kind of cool thinking about kind of the connections that we have from the ancient world till today and kind of the journey that people themselves have kind of gone through. So if you want to listen to any of that, I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for stopping by. Please enjoy. How's everybody doing? I forgot to say that in the last episode. I'm really sorry for that. I hope y'all are doing okay. We've made it another day. It wasn't easy. Always something to cause distress, something to cause a problem. The only thing we need to do is try though. We're just persevering best as possible every single day, and I know that as a new day comes, that gives us another chance. Each person has their own way of living, has their own way of doing, and nobody's going to necessarily always look or know what you're doing. I know it's sometimes even easy to look at how other people do things and confuse why you're not the same. They can handle these things, they're doing whatever in life. Why can't I do the same? Just know that everyone else is struggling too. They're just struggling in their own ways. They just happen to mask their problems in a different way than you do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Focus on what you do. Focus on just how you can be you, how you do progress, how you make it through each day. If other people out there and they're judging, that's on them. They don't know how they're doing things in life. So you've made it another day. You're making it. You're trying. I see it. I know you're doing your best. I know I'm doing my best. But I'm happy to see that you're here with me, at least for an hour, at least for the duration of this podcast. But I'm doing good. As long as you're doing good, I'm doing good. Recently, I've kind of gotten into gaming a little bit more. I've talked about Project Zomboid before, so I won't talk about that again. But um, it's just gaming that always comes in these flows with me, and I'll always be a gamer down to my heart, and I'll always have interest, and I'll always play video games. You know what I'm saying? But surely some games just don't spike my interest, and some years we get these lulls, or some parts of the years. You know what I'm saying? But recently, I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube about The Sims 4. The Sims is literally one of my favorite franchises of all time, and I will forever play The Sims. And The Sims 4 is a great game. I think so far it's been like, I mean, people will argue, but it's the best Sims so far, just based off of how it looks and most of the gameplay. But one thing I hate about The Sims is that there's all these packs. They have a lot of what they call expansion packs or game packs or stuff packs. Just these little microtransactions that anything to steal your money. It's 30, $40 at a time, and it's insane. It's literally the classic, EA Sports. No, they're not EA Sports anymore. They're just EA. Sorry. It's the classic EA mantra: charge as much as possible for microtransactions. Dude, even more so, like The Sims 4 is free. It's free, but you still have to buy game packs for it. So that has always thrown me off, but I love The Sims, and I'm always gonna play The Sims. And recently, I've had that kind of new love for it. I kind of want to just like go back and, I have it on my PS4, and I'm kind of done with my PS4 right now. So, but I have my laptop, and I kind of just think about wanting to buy it for my laptop, and kind of starting from like a blank slate when it comes to the packs. Like I've bought a few over the time, and there's certain ones that I will always suggest, especially from the ones that I've bought that are really good. Like I've always been a fan of pets, like cats and dogs. That pack is always great. Or what is it? Yeah, it's called. What is it called? Cats and dogs? Is it their pets? Cats and dogs. I think that's what it's called in Sims 4. Get Famous is like another really good one. The University one is an amazing pack, I think. But I'm not always sold necessarily. Like I wouldn't get the Get Famous one again. And there's a lot of them that I've avoided through all this time because I know that they're crappy, and they don't add anything to the game, or at least nothing that I want. When I like play The Sims and I kind of look at these new packs, I think I'm always kind of expecting I want it to not only add to like actual gameplay, like new careers or a new thing to do in the game, but I want like new creative sim things and new like build mode stuff. And I feel like it just becomes too sporadic at times, and there's a lot of packs they could just like mush together. So I have this new, interest in The Sims 4 right now, and I want to play it. And I think I'm just gonna hook up my PS4 until then and just deal with the packs that I have. I have a couple good packs, but I know that like I'd probably, if I had to do it over again, I would get things like Cottage Lifestyle or Seasons or like Tiny Living, or there's a couple things that are like recently, like I haven't played it in a few months. And so recently they put out like, what is it, Get Together, which is kind of like a expansion on family. And I love that. I love doing families in The Sims. So kind of more of that. And they added a new game world and stuff like that. And soon they're going to release a new pack called For Rent, which is basically like you could just create apartments and be a landlord, which is for I've always done throughout the games, even when you couldn't do that kind of stuff. Like I just loved building apartments. And when you get the university pack, you can have roommates. I think it's in that one specifically, I think. So I've always done things where I've built like apartments in Sims 4 and then just made people my roommates. And you can like assign their beds, but it's kind of hard because they don't just stay in their apartment, so on so. So you can assign them their bed, but they'll like cook in your kitchen or someone else's kitchen. So I've always had to kind of do something where I make their bedrooms, their own separate rooms, but there's like communal spaces or whatever. But I love The Sims, and I'll play The Sims for my whole life probably. And when Sims 5 comes out, I'll be a diehard for that. And I always wish I had just the money for it. And I know that I would go back and buy like Sims 3 and buy all those packs and buy The Sims. I just would waste so much money on The Sims if I had money for that. I think it's a game that everybody can play. And whether you want to just like trade people and live their lives, or you're kind of an architectural mind and you want to build buildings, literally you can do both and have fun doing both. But yeah, enough rambling for right now. I appreciate everybody stopping by. Let's hop into the episode. Episode 28 coming your way. My main source of entertainment is usually YouTube. I've talked about YouTube plenty of times before in my episodes and stuff like that, and I know I will continue to talk about YouTube, shout it out whenever I get a chance. I think there's an unbelievable variety of content that spreads throughout the seemingly less, seemingly endless catalog of videos. Sorry. At times it's kind of overwhelming just looking through all these videos and trying to find something, but over time as a fan and as like a regular consumer of YouTube, some have stood out and some have risen pretty quickly and some have taken time to kind of become popular. And I always think that's kind of the beautiful thing of YouTube is that it's a place for all sort of kind of content creation, and there's no timeline on who's going to blow up or not. It's all about that kind of consistency and just making sure that you're always putting out the kind of content that you want. But I love YouTube, and so I was kind of thinking about some of my favorite YouTube channels, as I quite often do, and I've talked about a few channels on my other episodes, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about or just highlight a couple of my favorite YouTube channels and talk about maybe when they kind of came out, how many subscribers they got, just highlight these channels. Just, just basically just a basic little highlight. And I always suggest that people go to YouTube. It's a good way to find out, find different types of content, when maybe you feel like the shows that you're watching are a little bit stale or some of the movies that are out, you're not really interested in, then I feel like YouTube is kind of a good medium ground to find just randomness. But yeah, I picked 4 channels specifically. There's plenty more kind of I'm subscribed to and I love, so but I picked 4. The first one I had on my list is a YouTube channel called Dead Meat. Kind of a great name. It's a YouTube channel that's literally surrounded around horror content. They do these things called kill counts, which are really just like horror movie reviews, and they count to the kills, but it's really just highlighting the beauty of these movies, some of these movies, and sometimes the kind of cringiness of some other movies. There's also a podcast that goes along with the channel where they talk further about horror and in many intricacies, the many I always try to use that word, the many little things, the little whims of horror. The channel is run mainly by a guy named James A. Janice, but also his wife Chelsea. They do most of the content, but James was kind of the guy that started it all. It started 6 years ago, so not that long ago. Not really relevant, kind of a short relevant time. They have 6.25 million subscribers, which is just awesome. In 6 years, that seems like a lot, and very much so. They're in tune with the horror community. That's always what they've been about. They're fans themselves. Their first video was they did a kill count or a horror movie review on Friday the 13th. They did James did the whole series. Eventually, like years later, he came back and redid the kill counts for like that one and a few other of the early ones, but that's a perfect franchise to start on, and it's literally like a classic horror movie, classic slasher, just beautiful. And yeah, they literally just do horror movie reviews, horror movie content, anything that surrounds the kind of horror genre, and ultimately great people. I think they do an awesome job, and I love what they do, and I love the way they talk and the research they get into, and it always feels like a lot of the things that I get to know about with modern horror movies and modern scary movies is definitely through Dead Meat. I've watched a lot of those movies, but when you're watching them, you're not necessarily thinking about every background information, every little bit of background information. So they do a good job of like highlighting all that and bringing it forward and showing everybody the greatness of horror. I just feel like everybody can likes a little spooky movie every once in a while, and to think that's like your whole life is that would be kind of amazing. At least for me, I love horror movies, and I have a tendency to be a little. I like the spooky things, the scary things in life. I like that stuff. But I would 100% go and suggest, even if you don't want to watch the scary movies, if you just want to know about scary movies, go look up Dead Meat and watch them. And like I said, they're great people. Next on the list, I kind of stand in the film review genre, but also kind of expanding a little further beyond that is it's a pretty classic channel. It's been around for a long time as Cinemassacre is what it's called. Yeah, Cinemassacre. And most famously, I guess, really, what the channel is most famous for is Angry Video Game Nerd, the Angry Video Game Nerd, which is oddly enough the main guy that runs the channel. His name is James as well, which is just funny. But that's what he got famous for. 17 years ago, first video was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's like it was a game review, but the whole shtick behind the angry video game nerd was that how bad these games were. He's how pissed is at these games and how he just kind of rips these games apart while still showcasing the classicness of some games. But yeah, 17 years ago, over 17 years, he's gained 3.79 million subscribers on YouTube, which that's pretty solid. I think over a million is pretty impressive. Like over like a 100,000 is impressive, you know? So and over time it was like that's what he kind of started with was the angry video game nerd, but over time it transformed into like doing movie reviews. What like the Cinna and Cinemassacre, you know? And not just horror movies, he does other kind of movies, but horror feels like it's like mostly what he does. And truly, he gets into some pretty deep dives when it comes to the films, and he gets the old school stuff. And I think generally his content is very kind of like nostalgic driven a little bit. Like the set for his angry video game nerd like videos is like a old 80s basement or whatever kind of vibe, and it's just amazing. And him himself is he's just a great guy too, putting a little bit of production into these videos, and it's all kind of like it's just like that classic, you know, nerd in his bedroom, you know, filming gaming videos. And but it's you know over time it's been 20 years since he's well, 17 years, but it's been a long time. And you know he's not the person he used to be, but he still loves these games, or you know hates these games. He doesn't really hate them, but he's not as angry as he used to be. You know, it's not. He's just more displeased with the games as he's gotten older. But I just love the way, and he's another guy that does a lot of thorough research, and I think I like that kind of stuff. Is when I find YouTube channels where people are kind of passionate about a certain thing, and they'll do whatever it is and research whatever and kind of drive themselves towards that certain thing. And that's what Cinemassacre and Games has always done. I literally kind of remember those videos. I think the first uh angry video game nerd video I ever watched was when he played the Karate Kid like for the Super Nintendo. Yeah, but his first one was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I think recently he just came back and revisited to play that game and like beat it officially because he didn't beat it when he played it. It's not about beating the games. It's just about showing you how terrible some of these old school games are. But 100% another YouTube channel I would suggest to go watch and enjoy and support. Staying on a little bit of like the scary vibe a little bit, but getting away from like film reviews and whatnot is there's a guy on YouTube named Mr. Ballin, and he pops up on other social over like other social medias all the time. Like I see him on Facebook all the time, but Mr. Ballin, he does scary stories or talks about like true crime stories or like just weird conspiracies or just weird stories. He's like a veteran, you know, he ex-military guy and just always had a interest in like these kind of spooky, scary stories and whatnot, and just made it a thing. And awesome guy. He's just incredible in the way he like tells these stories. And another researcher, another guy that he really looks into these stories and makes sure that you know he's telling the truth and he's offering every bit of information and sometimes even trying to like expel his own theories and whatnot. And it's just so fun to listen to what he says. And some of the stories are kind of well known stories, but there's a lot of times when he's some of the stories that he tells that I've never heard of and are spooky and creepy and just kind of it shows you kind of the eeriness of life a little bit. But he's only been doing it for 3 years. 8.23 million subscribers, which in 3 years, that's insane. You know, that's 3 million a year, a little over or a little under 3 million a year. And so that's crazy. And his first video was it was what I saw in my room still haunts me. Just a scary story. And I don't remember what that. I think it was just a story about someone having like like a sleep paralysis type thing, and just one of those classic internet tales. Everybody sleep paralysis demons. Everybody's obsessed with that kind of thing or whatever. It's really truly one of the spooky things that I think people on the internet are interested in. But like I said, it's not just like scary stories like that. It's true crime content and just the general weird mysteries that the world has. And his voice is very easy to listen to, so you don't have to watch like him actively, but just listening to the stories and just hearing him talk and just very thorough. Like I said, always very thorough with how he speaks, and it's always like some storytellers are kind of the spooky narrators where they'll kind of put on a voice and play characters or whatever, but Mr. Ballin is kind of more so just he's just a factual guy. He's kind of just spitting the facts, giving you the information and kind of letting the story itself kind of give you the spooks and letting the information really determine how scared you are or how intrigued you are into the story itself or the actual case, the cold case that he might be talking about. I love his videos. I would 100% go and especially with I feel like everybody's kind of this true crime obsession that a lot of people have. I think he's the perfect YouTube channel for a lot of people. All right, lastly, we'll jump into one more. This one totally diverging away from horror content, film content, all that stuff, but um Andrew Schrock. This is his that's his YouTube channel. He is a skateboarder. He owns a skate company called Revive Skateboards and a few other companies as well, but not a professional, but he owns like a company that has professional skaters, you know what I'm saying? And he's been on YouTube for a long time, 15 years, 5.62 million subscribers in that amount of time. And his first video was a montage. It was funniest montage ever. I literally think it's just like a bunch of his videos of him and his friends just like filming skate, actual skate tricks or them like playing pranks or just doing dumb young things, right? A really good like classic kind of like especially with 15 years ago, a classic first video for a lot of people. But over time, he's always stuck to the skateboarding thing. That's always been his content and he's always revolved it around skateboarding and over time it was always it started with just him as like kind of it was just what he was doing and posting videos with his friends and as he grew a fan base people wanted like a board from him and wanted merch from him so that's how he started a company was a fan base wanting merch, wanting like their own skateboards for their little community, and it's just an amazing story. He's from Cincinnati, right? I think it's like the only person that I know that's actually I know where they're from because they rep it, and he's just a nice guy. He literally you could tell that he meets the friends that he makes along the way. He likes to bring along with him a lot of the guys that like his the co-owner of the company has been his best friend since they were young and a lot of the guys that he works with still till this day he's known for years for 20 whatever years and I think he like really cherishes that is like helping his friends out and building like a community around him that's a friendly vibe and then you get some fun skateboarding in the meantime, and they do some cool videos. They do like Wednesdays, which is they get like someone to do like these goofy challenges for like a prize, like money or something like that, and they just do cool montages. And everybody on that team, if you go look up that channel, everybody on the team shreds. And all the pros that they have like six of pros on the team, and they all are amazing on the main team. Revive the main team, and they all shred they're all absolutely amazing skaters and great personalities, and it totally just builds that whole vibe, and it really makes it a cool thing to watch. It's like easy to support the guy, and especially when you see and he also has like he makes like family content. He has three sons who are incredibly funny and a beautiful wife, and so his family content's just as good. And it's just awesome to see. I think I'm always trying to search for people who really enjoy the content they make and I like a little wholesomeness. I love wholesomeness, so I don't mind it. He just is like a really lovely guy to watch and I just think about like all how fortunate everybody is to maybe even know him. You know how beneficial it is to surround yourself with such a friendly person, someone who wants to kind of bring you along for the ride. And that's just what it is. It always feels like that that the thing they got going on is just snowballed into this amazing thing, and they're just along for the ride. But yeah, those just a few YouTube channels there. I love YouTube, and I know that I'm always gonna watch YouTube, and any chance I get, I'll want to shout it out. And as I post my podcast up on YouTube, so I really respect YouTube as a company, as a platform, and I know that I'm always looking for new content. And if anybody has any good YouTube channels, I would love a suggestion anytime. And I suggest everybody go listen or go watch the videos that these content creators make. And I hope to like also like one day just do maybe a few more videos like this, just highlighting the beautiful channels that are on YouTube and really highlighting a variety of different content. It's important to have some structure in your day-to-day life. A lot of things may not be in your control, and hopefully there are maybe a few things, like hygiene or, morning coffee or exercise. Really just these little small things that you can do throughout your day that kind of stabilize yourself. And when things get a little hectic, you can kind of go back to those little goals, those little steps that you set for yourself. I think it's important to have a daily routine. I feel that a little structure when you wake up every day, and sometimes those things may fall apart and you're not always going to be able to hit everything on your list, but having those basic needs filled, or just doing those little things that will prop you up at certain moments in the day is not a bad thing to do. I think a daily routine is very important to stability. It's not necessarily the number one key factor to stability in your life, or at least feeling like there's a little stability, but I think it's one of those big beneficial things. I just think like when you wake up at a consistent time and you make sure you brush your teeth or you wash your face and you have coffee, and even if it's you don't have breakfast every time, at least kind of that. You listen to a specific song when you go to work, or you get home from work and you exercise every day, or you like to read a little bit of a book, or it's literally like the small things. It's just about I think it's really just about those controllable tasks, those small, same tasks that you can always control. And I think a little bit of that, having a little bit of that success, I guess, kind of throughout the day where you hit these little things and you feel like you're achieving something, even when on a grand scale, you're maybe not necessarily doing something grand, on something big on a grander scale. It doesn't matter if it's big things. You don't always have to be doing these overly productive things throughout the day. You want to be productive, and hopefully that these little steps kind of give you a little motivation, but it's just about trying to have these controllable things, these repeatable routines, these tasks in your life that don't feel like they're taking away anything from you or wasting time or something like that, but that are only benefiting you, that are making you ready for the day or helping you get through the day in some sort of way, whatever that may be. It's sometimes hard to even assimilate to a routine. I don't know what necessarily, you could read all these articles and watch YouTube videos about other people's daily routines and what they do to make themselves good every day, but it's not what your routine necessarily is. So, it's kind of hard to find that kind of thing, right? I think we know that there are certain things that we have to do during the day that, or at least that we have to do that will make us feel a certain way or set us up for success. So maybe just starting kind of with those things. That maybe waking up early inevitably always makes you feel a little bit better. Exercising after work is always it always makes you feel good. Listening to the song before work helps you put yourself into the right mindset to deal with, the inevitable hassle of work. But it is hard to assimilate into a routine, to find that really true routine for yourself. And it might take a little bit of like divulging into this and divulging into that or whatever. But we know that like things like personal hygiene, right? That works. That's a beautiful thing to try to do every day. Brushing your teeth, washing your face, even taking a shower. Sometimes maybe you could skip a day if you're not like a super musky person. Even like little things like daily errands, right? You stop to get coffee. You get groceries after work. You have to buy something that, new batteries or something. Those are little things that you can complete that make you feel good. And part of that daily routine, if you know that you're setting yourselves up with these little things, then hopefully it's only going to continue throughout maybe a little bit of a hassle that maybe a day brings you. Just anything, amusement even, like reading a book every day, right? If you know that no matter what happens, all this stupid stuff in the morning and all this crazy stuff after work, maybe finally you get that one time to yourself at home and you finally, decompress and you find that relief, and maybe the one thing you could do is read a book. That's a good enough daily routine right there. Maybe all you have time for is coffee in the morning and, your show at night. That's part of a daily routine. That's the things that kind of make you feel whole. And maybe that's really the whole point too, is kind of just like feeling whole, feeling complete, fulfilling yourself. It's sometimes things can feel very mundane or sometimes very unexpected when you have these things in your life that pop up, or so trying to put these things into your routine could feel very hectic. Where I think the routine's always kind of adjusting itself because you're trying to do things to help yourself through the day or make yourself feel a little bit better or whatever. But sometimes you've kind of maybe successfully controlled a certain aspect of your life, or you don't feel the need that like this thing in your life, this daily thing, isn't really benefiting me anymore. So, out with this thing, in with that thing, whatever it may be, but just feeling complete, fulfilling yourself. You don't have to have 100 things on your list. You don't have to have, 50. You don't have to have 20. Just having a couple things to make you feel complete throughout the day, to make you feel good about yourself throughout the day is amazing. I know in my own personal experience, I've recently just over time, I mean like through time as an adult, I have literally tried to tell myself I need to do a certain amount of things a day. Not necessarily with like work or anything or like that, or anything that I need in my life, the needs in life, but just the little things that make me feel complete. If I can wake up every day at the same time, then maybe that just makes me feel better. It makes me feel like I have the whole day to myself. Or, if I get up and I exercise a little bit, even if it's, 15 minutes here or, 15 minutes later, that's something that makes me feel good. And with like podcasting and trying to find out like other creative content that I want to do and create, I'm constantly trying to every day just hit certain points. I'm doing a little research, or I'm writing a little bit, and I'm doing a little bit of art, and I'm just trying to hit certain points throughout the day, trying to have a certain consistent routine. And I know that like I'll switch things up and things won't necessarily always matter to me, but I just think I love having those little things, those little steps throughout the day that you almost kind of got to look forward to. Those like good, like achievable things in between maybe the uncertain, unachievable, kind of inconsistent things. But just also just looking forward to it as well. I'm always just big thing is you got to look forward to that daily routine. You make a list and you make some reminders on your phone, but if you're not doing it, then then it's not right. You got to like be so obsessed with that daily routine in a way. You got to kind of think about that this is only going to be good for me. This is only going to benefit what I'm doing. Make me feel good about myself, make me feel yada 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 yada. It's a consistent thing with improvement. We're always, I think, a little bit, trying to do what's best for us, and we want to be a little bit better, and we want to make what's better out of our situation, and we want to feel good as people. So when things are a little uncontrollable and you feel like maybe things are super hectic and the job's a little consistent or money's a little inconsistent, friendships, relationships, whatever it may be, that the simple little daily routine can be great. And like I said, even if just as simple as personal hygiene and exercise, but if you also want to throw in some bigger, hefty liftings and throw in errands every day, or you want to try to do something big with your life, then throw it into a routine. But also make sure that you're not piling things on that you can't achieve. Don't list 100 things knowing that you're only going to achieve 60 of them or whatever. It's still pretty great, as the 60 out of 100 ain't bad. And sometimes things will slip out of your routine, undoubtedly. Time and life kind of have that funny thing where, they have their own path, they have their own flow. So you may not be able to do everything. But when you pick those certain controllable tasks and you have these certain steps that you know you can hit every day, and you know you can do this, and you know you can do that, and you have a little bit time for this and whatever else, that I think having that daily routine can bring a lot of stability. I think it's important to have a little structure, and not necessarily having structure just by your daily routine, but I think a daily routine can make things a little more simple and feel like you're a little more control in your life. In our lives, we aren't always certain on every outcome to every aspect of our life. We go through good times and we go through bad times. Often it can bring forward a certain predisposed expectation on things. Something goes a certain way, and that can decide how you respond or react. Before even like letting a situation take effect, we think something will always go good, or we think something will always go bad, and then when something flips, your expectation flips, then everything kind of goes out the window. It's hard not to necessarily have like a predetermined outcome to something, or you expect a certain outcome to something. Whether it's something that we know is going to happen to us, or it's kind of like an unwanted or unknown thing, expectations kind of become predetermined at times. You kind of have it in your mind that because something's going to happen, that something that you're expecting something to come from that. And sometimes it is the same outcome always, right? Sometimes it stays pretty fortunate. Sometimes you stay consistent and things stay pretty good, but then sometimes things are unfortunate. And it's hard not to have a certain, predisposed look onto things when we're going through bad aspects or good aspects. Especially when not a lot I always think about, like, you never know what's going to happen out of something when you haven't really been through it too often. If you haven't had so many good things happen in your life, then you're not necessarily going to expect good to come from it, or you're not going to expect how you're going to feel from it. And kind of the same thing with bad is that when you have certain bad things in your life and you're not used to that kind of bad, that your expectations are going to be none. You're not going to know necessarily what's going to happen. So, as certain things can be in our control for sure, and we can expect that a certain thing will happen when we put a certain effort into something, or you do a certain task or whatever it may be, that you might know that there is a 100% an outcome for that thing. Certain things. But there are a lot of things that are out of our control. And with those out of control things and those certain, factors of life and the human existence, when it kind of comes through, we may not be ready for that. And because you've never experienced something like that, your expectation is going to be kind of confused. You don't know the outcome, so you have no predisposed expectation of it. And even if you think you've been through enough, or you maybe been through a similar situation and you expect, oh, this is going to be kind of the same outcome, it's not that way sometimes, right? So, even a question of, I think, even getting lulled into expectation, right? You're comfortable with an outcome. Something's kind of always happen, whether it may be good or bad, and that's kind of what you expect it always to be that way. So you're kind of just lulled into thinking it's going to be that way. You're lulled into it always expecting this certain outcome. And maybe things change. Maybe it becomes a different outcome, but when that happens, I think it's a very sudden thing, right? We don't know when outcomes switch. We're not necessarily always expecting it. Always throwing in that word expecting. But that's the whole thing with expectations is there's a predisposed outcome to a lot of aspects of our life that we kind of hold on to. So when things come out of the moment and kind of are all of a sudden discovered by yourself or thrown at you, and it flips that expectation. Sometimes in the temporary where maybe you realize that this isn't the norm, that this isn't the outcome that's always going to happen, but this is what you have to deal with now. But maybe it flips your expectation all the way on its head. Maybe it all of a sudden just totally changes how you view certain thing in your life. Now you know that every time this certain thing happens, that you expect a different outcome, even if it was just a random thing, right? Some things are just that traumatic or just that strong. Those outcomes that really can affect us. And when something affects you pretty heavily, you can't help but to expect a certain feeling from it, or at least expect a certain thing from it every time, a certain outcome from it every time. And I don't know necessarily how to process new expectations. I think I have trouble sitting in the certain. I expect certain things out of my life, not necessarily in the way of like deserving or whatever, or that I want more than others or something like that. But it's just I have certain wants and I have certain needs, and but I just always feel like because certain things have always treated me a certain way, or I've always responded a certain way and done things a certain way, that I kind of always expect it to always be that way. I don't ever think that I can change in certain aspects. I believe in myself that I can become a different person and I can become, better at certain things, but it's hard not to think that some things won't change. So that kind of makes me forced into a certain expectation in all these aspects of my life. So I guess like changing expectation comes with changing a little bit of that mindset, however that may be. Sometimes you gotta kind of release expectation. When your expectation, I think also it kind of takes over not just from outcome to outcome, but kind of an over outlook on life. You kind of if you're a downer or you're someone who's kind of an upper, you're kind of expect accordingly. You're always in a bad mood, maybe you always expect bad. You're in a good mood, you maybe always expect good. So that's kind of hard to think about releasing expectation. Really truly letting like outcome have a natural effect on you. Actually truly trying to think that like, well, even though this is how it's always happened before and I've always done something a certain way and this has been the outcome, that maybe I just don't do that. I change my approach. I change my way of thinking. It's not as simple as sometimes overnight, right? Or it's never that simple to change your mindset overnight. Sorry if you heard me burps. Sorry. But even holding just that little expectation, I don't know how to necessarily release all expectation, especially when it feels like it has a certain control in your life. It kind of makes you think that you can always, handle an outcome because you expect it to go a certain way. But you got to maybe think about just holding little expectation, kind of a vague expectation of things. Maybe you know how things are going to go, maybe you have a pretty clear view or a pretty good idea, but sometimes you don't know how an outcome is going to really truly be like happen, or you don't know what's going to become of an outcome unless you kind of just let things happen, kind of let the weight of things, the nature of things happen. I don't know what makes like certain expectations higher of a, stressed or more weight to yourself than others. I really don't know. When certain things, I guess, mean more to you, or you feel like you need something a little bit more when a certain outcome, you may expect a certain outcome of it because you're kind of honing in on that one thing. I think getting too caught up in a certain situation can kind of maybe predispose expectation on everything else. You kind of maybe have had like a certain outcome on these certain couple things, but that doesn't necessarily determine everything else, right? So maybe it just gives you that little bit of a piss poor expectation on things, or even in a sense of like kind of had a string of good things, these kind of string of luck, and you're expecting kind of always these good things to come, and then all of a sudden a bad thing comes, or inevitably around the corner, it's kind of waiting for you in a weird way. So I just think like allowing the nature of situations. I don't, it's sometimes things are seen, sometimes things are not, right? You don't always know what's going to be the outcome. And that's kind of the point of chance. And as predisposed expectations on things is going to keep you from doing certain things. I know it has for me when I always expect a certain response, or I don't think I can handle a certain thing. So I'm always expecting to fail. Then it holds me back on doing so much. I've stopped myself all the time just expecting something to already happen. And then there's times when I've actually gone and done something and kind of forced myself into performing something, or forcing an outcome, and my expectations were totally destroyed in a way, flipped 180 degrees. We're never really ready for the outcomes. So I'm trying my best to keep things pretty natural, keep my expectations low on a lot of things. I know I can have expectations on a couple of these little things that I can expect a good, I use the bathroom. I know I'm going to feel better afterwards. Sorry for you. That's a gross example, but I know there's certain expectations for small things. And when it comes to the big stressful things, like when I'm podcasting, every podcast I record, I literally have this. I think I'm going to upload it and it's going to get no views. I kind of have this already predetermined expectation of it getting zero views. But what I need to do is just expect nothing of it. Just say like, "Hey, I'm putting this out there and I'm just having fun with it." I just got to expect myself to enjoy the podcast more so. But I think we all are kind of looking for an outcome in certain things in life, and we all want a little bit of this and we all want a little bit of that, and we can't help but to get into a certain routine, kind of like what I talked on the last topic. But I think when you get too lulled into certain expectations on certain outcomes, then it may just predispose it all over everything, every other aspect of your life. You won't then truly be ready for the nature of situations. The world we live in today is long ways away from the world people thousands of years ago lived in. The nature of people, shape of the land, just many of amazing changes have happened through time, through the endless years that Earth has existed and humans on this Earth have existed. And undoubtedly, certain things transcend time. As more history kind of becomes uncovered and we find more artifacts or more forgotten places, we get to start to see the connections to the old world. We get to see how history has transformed, or how history has sustained. There's a lot of aspects that I think people from thousands of years ago did that we still kind of repeat. One thing I would think about is like religion. It's kind of amazing to think about, even if you're not a super religious person, it's cool to think about the history of religion. Think about the history of how long people have believed in whatever it may be. I was reading an article a couple weeks ago, and I was reading it off the Daily Mail, and it was talking about this body that had been discovered, this mummified, or they had discovered it at some point, but recently they had gone through one of their mummies that they had found at this place and discovered a tattoo on it, and they think the tattoo relates to Jesus. And this mummy is 1,300 years old too, which is crazy to think. But in the article, it was saying that they discovered the tattoo accidentally. That they kind of had this mummy already. That they had found this mummy in, where did I say it was from? The Ghazali Monastery. Sorry, yeah, the Ghazali Monastery. They had this mummy there, and they were kind of doing some cataloging or whatever it may be, looking through what they had and looking through all the stuff. And there was an archaeologist and a photographer that were searching through these mummies and noticed on one of these mummies' legs that there was a tattoo. And at first they were kind of like, It's this weird marking. They don't really know, but through a little bit of that kind of analyzation and a little bit of history, and they discovered that it kind of maybe identify it's like a related symbol to some other symbols that have popped up from that time period. This man named Dr. Robert Stark, and then there was this woman named, or I think it was a woman. Sorry, I don't know if it was a woman. Her name is I think it was Kari Gilbalts. I don't know if it was a woman. I keep thinking it is. But Robert Stark was the archaeologist, and Carrie was she's like a specialist in medieval tattooing. Like she's an archaeologist as well, but medieval tattooing specifically is like something she's a specialist in. And they were taking photos and saw that this tattoo was on this mummified leg. And apparently, it had been the second medieval tattoo that was discovered in that specific region, the what was the Nubian region of Africa. And the other tattoo was apparently a monogram of Saint Michael, and it was on a woman's inner thigh. Which this tattoo that they found was on a man's leg. And originally, they believed that Nubian women were the only ones that could be tattooed or whatever, or at least were the only ones that got tattooed. So finding it on a man was like a totally different thing to them. And this is a cool thing to kind of point a new thing in history, to point out a new aspect that and just kind of you only believe a certain thing because you've only seen it a certain way, right? Which is pretty cool. And what made this tattoo a little bit different was that the early tattoo techniques around that area were like dashes and dots and kind of geometric, floral patterns. Whereas these tattoos, these two medieval tattoos, were more straight lines and they felt like they were a little more detailed in that way. The Nubian region is in northeastern Africa. It's the Nile to the Red Sea. It's like from the Red Sea to the banks of the Nile, basically. And apparently it had some of the earliest states in the world, dating back to 5000 BC, which is crazy. It was the Kingdom of Kush. They traded with Egyptians, as well as waged wars with Egypt and Assyria around that time. That was kind of crazy to think about not only how old this body is, 1300 years old, but how old the world is in general. One of those beautiful things is as we kind of discover the ancient world, we find connections to the future, to the present time, and to the future and beyond. But it was a apparently the symbol. It was the depicting Jesus Christ. It kind of looked like it was maybe like Jesus on like the crucifix type thing. It kind of did. And it also, uh, at the time, was kind of extremely rare, I guess, for tattoos to even be like a thing. And for it to be on this, like from that, specifically a man from that region, is even more rare. But yeah, literally, it's from it was from they found it in the Ghazali Monastery, which is 9.3 miles from the banks of the Nile in northern Sudan. And it's just such an ancient part of the world. As we know, Africa in general is just so ancient, and a lot of a lot of the life we know, right, came from Africa. And they were thinking that the guy was maybe a monk because they found the body at the monastery as well as like a lot of other artifacts and stuff. And so they believe this man to be a monk that was living at the monastery. In that possibly like the mark was more so kind of a reminder of a religious journey that this man had gone through. And it was in like a private place, kind of, where it was more on his foot, to where most people wouldn't see it, but he could see it. And so they were thinking it was kind of like this mark of his journey into becoming, a Christian or whatever, a follower of Jesus. And also kind of a perfect example of, I think, sometimes through different cultures, and it feels like through the past we've seen that certain people have like a proclivity for religion, and they show it through their bodies, through art and tattoos and whatnot, or wearing like certain religious garments or whatever. I think people had like a certain bodily connection with religion. But they described it. It was called they were described the tattoo as It's a Christogram or a Christogram. I think it's Christogram more so. And it would combine the Greek letters of CHI and RHO, which means Christ, apparently in Greek. And then it also includes the letters of Alpha and Omega, which are the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet. And I think that kind of that represents the beginning and the ending of life kind of thing that God kind of represents the end and the beginning and the end of life type thing. So Jesus, Alpha to Omega, you know what I'm saying? And that was really introduced, I guess, by Constantine, I think, is when the Greek letters and its representation in Christianity, those kind of tattoos like that, were more so because of the Roman Empire, or at least were introduced around that time. And it was kind of amazing. They said that it's kind of serendipitous about this tattoo that the people, the Nubians, they didn't practice mummification. They weren't the type of people to like mummify people, but because of the harsh conditions that sit out there and like how arid it is, that naturally corpses mummify. And so thankfully it's helped like preserve a lot of these ancient humans, and we get to do some research and find out about the ways of the world from the past, but it's a little creepy, but also we get to see things like the tattoo. They said that literally the tattoo, the only way that it could stay is because of the mummification. The only way that most of the time ink kind of pushes out, and over time some tattoos fade, most tattoos fade, right? But they said that this one still kind of stayed pretty prominent, and it was because of like the mummification, those arid conditions accidentally mummifying them. And they want I was reading that they were talking about like they can't tell what the ink is because they don't want to remove the tattoo because of the fragility of the mummy. So it's kind of one of those mysteries still, where we know that certain ink around that time they were saying it was made from charcoal and would be mixed with things like water or animal fat or breast milk. Anything, I guess. Whatever they had just lying around. Whoever was willing to give up a little animal fat or breast milk. But they kind of think they can predetermine what the ink is based off of that. And but it's kind of crazy to think that we just kind of leave it there, and maybe one day the mummy itself will totally fade away. I don't know necessarily, right? But I really love that. And I think even if you're not a super religious person, I think things like that in certain history in religion is kind of interesting. That's something that's more so brought me closer to thinking about religion, is that there's a history to it, that people for hundreds and thousands of years have had certain proclivities towards religion, whatever it may be, whether it be, Jesus Christ, or, if you're Buddha or whatever. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I love history, and this article is a perfect example, I think, of how awesome it is that through time and in continuation of the world and the progression of the world, we get to find things like this. We get to dig up old things and find old books and find old tattoos and find old pots or whatever. You get to really see how things have transformed. And I mean, I know constantly I'm always wondered why certain things are a certain way, why we do a certain thing, and why humans might act this way, or just how things became to be the way they are. Even when I'm like sitting in my own room, like I am right now, recording this podcast, I think about who walked this land before me. What was it? Who lived here? What, animals, people? Is there something dug underground that we'll just never know because it's not necessarily, it wasn't significant hundreds of years ago, but maybe now it'd be a little different. That's what I love is I would love to be a treasure hunter. Like that's kind of like that would be like a dream job for me, treasure hunting. Be like Nicolas Cage. But I'm constantly fascinated with history, and every time I read an article like this, it just further amazes me on the beautiful thing about the world and kind of the crazy things that the world goes through, and how crazy our history has truly been. Alrighty, friends, that's really all I have to say about that. Episode 28. I appreciate y'all tuning in, coming by, listening to me talk. If you want to listen to episode 28 or any of my other episodes, I always post them on YouTube and Spotify. You can go listen to them. The Odd Thoughts podcast, pretty simple. If you found it enjoyable or found it relatable in any way, then if you subscribe, I'd be very grateful for that. And I'm just trying to gain as much support as possible. I'm also up on a bunch of different social medias. I have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. All those will be named in the description below the video, as well as they're all linked in my channel description if you go on my actual YouTube channel. But yeah, I always appreciate the chance to get up on the microphone and talk to everybody, and I appreciate anybody that listens. I just want to reach out to as many people as possible and just hopefully add a little comfort and a little entertainment. But yeah, I love everybody. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Please show up for yourselves every single day and be excellent to each other.